All right, I played a bunch of new upcoming games, like work in progress versions of games early, and I want to talk about them. If you're new, this is part 2. I actually did the first part of this video here. It's going to be linked somewhere. Go check that out. I talked about the Xbox, like ROG Ally X, Marvel's Cosmic Invasion, Code Vein 2, the big Crimson Desert, and a bunch of stuff. I went to Summer Game Fest, and behind the scenes there's a thing called Play Days, so I got to check out a bunch of games and works in progress. This isn't like a final judgment on these games, but I did see some exciting stuff that might interest some of you. The first one, I'll start off with a big one. It's Pragmata, or Pragmata. Pragmata? I don't know. My Long Island, New York accent really struggles with this one, but this is Capcom's newest game that was seemingly on an indefinite hiatus, now reemerged. And I got my hands on it and I got to play it for about a half an hour. I got to play what was essentially a pretty early section of the game and just generally get introduced to some of the flow and some of the mechanics. In a way, it's kind of like a strategic hybrid of like Dead Space and Vanquish. Vanquish in terms of being like a cool spacesuit guy and kind of dashing around, but combined also with like the slower chunkiness and methodical like resource management of Dead Space with, very tight over-the-shoulder combat. So what's really interesting about this game is that you're this generic spaceman guy who has like an android girl on his shoulder helping him through this adventure. An adventure that I didn't really get to learn too much about. I got to see the characters first meet, and he's essentially stranded and busted up, and she fixes his suit and heals him up, and then they go and tackle these threats. And what's interesting is that that android girl on your shoulder serves as essentially your hacker, so to speak. So when you fight, when you square up against a robotic android style enemy, whatever it is, as you ADS onto that enemy, you target that enemy, on the top right, a kind of puzzle mini game pops up. You navigate this puzzle with the face buttons, like triangles up, squares left, circle is right, X is down, and as you navigate that, once you complete it, it opens up the enemy for attacks. Essentially, she hacks their shield. Then you can blast away and damage those enemies. Along with that, it seems like there's an added level of strategy where if you pick up consumable items in the environment, you can spend them in the hacking mini game, like use the hacking mini game to route to get to the end point, but in the process route through certain icons that will then debuff them and leave them open to more attacks, like more damage, status effects, stuff like that. I thought this was a really, really creative idea because I think it works well where you're kind of like strafing around the enemy, you're backing away from the enemy, you're holding ADS, and you're kind of micromanaging a little hacking puzzle at the same time. Just a really, really cool, novel concept. I'm very curious to see how long this will how they'll keep this interesting over the course of an entire game. I only got to experience a handful of enemy types, so I didn't get to see a ton of variation with that hacking minigame, but I expect that there's going to be some. What's interesting is how much the game does emphasize it. This isn't like a throwaway mechanic, right? A lot of your weapons, which I experienced kind of like a space pistol, a kind of heavier shotgun, a kind of thing that will shoot a bubble, and then if that enemy is within that bubble, they get damaged. Some cool feeling weapons, some chunky feeling weapons. They all had very, very limited ammo. Either just limited ammo in general from a resource standpoint, but also just a limited amount of shots before you have to reload. Like the pistol has 5 shots and then you have to reload. So it really focuses on hacking the enemy, powering down its shields, opening it up for attack, and then nailing those few shots. Again, I think that's a very cool loop, and I think it has a lot of potential, and I'd like to just see where it goes, how far they can take it. Visually, it looked very interesting, and I honestly think the kind of like Kojima Productions, like Ludens-esque spaceman with a weird like robotic kind of like Mega Man girl on his shoulder is just a cool concept. It's a cool, interesting idea. I wish he'd put some goddamn shoes on, because I feel like that's kind of weird, but other than that, I don't know. I just think this is interesting. What I got to see, the spaceman himself felt very, very generic. He felt like a main character from like the mid-2000s, just Guy McMahon. Along with that, the level I was in, while it had some puzzles and some kind of like things you needed to navigate, like traps and stuff like that, and like shield walls and lasers, I found the environments pretty unremarkable. It was kind of fun to do your spaceman dash and spaceman like boost up and float around, but I just felt like it needed a little more. Maybe because it's an early level, it's just kind of showing you some pretty basic stuff, but I'm just curious to see how much it can expand upon, like, you know, making the characters interesting, making the levels interesting, but most importantly, how that combat loop will feel fresh over the course of a 15, 20, 25, however long game. Speaking of Capcom, I also got to see a bunch of Resident Evil 9 gameplay behind the scenes. I already did a whole video on that. I didn't put it in like a roundup video. That's a whole dedicated video. If you didn't check that out yet, big Resident Evil fan, had a lot to say. That's going to be linked in the description down below as well. Hey, now next up, this video is brought to you by our longtime sponsor, Vessie. If you don't know, Vessie provides comfortable, dependable footwear. They got a bunch of different shapes, varieties, styles, colors for every type of person, every situation. But the best thing about them is that they are 100% waterproof. Yes, I'm for real. They keep your feet completely dry while not actually feeling like a waterproof shoe. It's totally seamless. I've mentioned before how they're great everywhere. I've gotten stuck in the snow with them. I've taken them to the beach. I've taken them to the woods, gotten them muddy, rinsed them right off because they're waterproof. But they're also great in cities because you have the confidence and the freedom of getting caught in the rain or stepping in a massive puddle and being completely fine. Especially with one of their dependable go-tos, check out The Weekend. It's a court-style shoe. It's very simple, very dependable. You can slip these right on if you can have them at your back door. Also, they're so lightweight. That makes a huge difference. Coupled that with the fact that they're 100% waterproof, it's just an ideal sneaker. So if you want to check this out, get your hands on the waterproof lightweight weekend sneaker and more by clicking the QR code on screen here or the link in the description. It's vessie.com/onjake. When you're there, you'll get 15% off your first pair. Once again, that's vessie.com/onjake for 15% off your first pair. Check them out, have fun, and big thanks to Vessie for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. But shifting gears to something completely different, I got to play the new game from Giant Squid. This studio was founded by, I believe he was the art director of Flower and the, of course, award-winning Journey. And his games kind of have felt kind of like evolutions of Journey, right? So he did Abzu, that kind of aquatic swimming game with awesome wintry music. It's beautiful. Then also The Pathless, which was a really fun kind of run and gun bow and arrow shooter with really cool vibes and really interesting, fun, smooth movement mechanics. That's what these games really excel at. And this newest game I got to play from Giant Squid is Sword of the Sea. This was announced a while back. You've probably seen the trailer. Some people sent it to me because essentially it's like a Journey or an Abzu or a Pathless, right? But with a skateboard, like sort of. You're essentially riding on a sword. You're hovering around, surfing, skating, whatever you want to call it, on this sword in a beautiful kind of post-apocalyptic fantasy abstract universe. And to me, this felt very much like a combination of the previous two games. It had a lot of the vibes, the beauty, the music, the nature aspects of Abzu combined with some of the movement mechanics, the exploration, like the objectives, the unlocking path stuff of The Pathless. And I was really into it. It's a very simple, straightforward game, but you're cruising through the desert, you're essentially hitting sand dunes and doing jumps and doing combos in the air. And if you've played an Abzu, you know, like the movement mechanics are really satisfying in terms of, like, in that game, it was a lot of swimming and diving and jumping up in the ocean and, like, you know, kind of swimming like a dolphin, but you had so much control over it and the flow and the feel was so satisfying. You weren't scoring points or anything, but it was just so fun to execute. So this game really doubles down on that by making you a flying hoverboard skateboard man to the point where, like, you're doing things you do in these games, right? You explore an ancient temple and then you scan a glowy thing and then a magical music plays and then it's revealed that there's flowers everywhere and that unlocks this like glowing thing that lets you go into another path, right? Stuff you've seen in these types of games before, but like in that, then also they'll just put like a fucking half pipe in the middle of an ancient temple and you can just score some flips and jumps on that. I don't know, just cool. Man, these games are really about vibes more than anything else. Like, just chill out, relax, adventure you play through. Not a ton of conflict, not a ton of threat, but exploration and a lot of kind of traditional video game puzzle exploration elements. It's got a lot of that. Really creative use of like underwater sections, and also like there was this level where there are these giant chains going across the desert, and then once you unlock one path, then you're able to do cool grinds along those chains to kind of grind your way across the environment, all while just doing more flips and jumps and stuff like that. I don't know. I think this one definitely has potential. I like their previous games, so it's kind of like a thing I'm into. Again, not like a game for everybody. You're not like scoring points, getting high scores. You're not like killing dudes or anything like that, but just definitely one to keep an eye on. Another game that felt like it's from a smaller studio, but it's got some production value. It's also being published by Epic Games. This one is Infinite Tessimals, if I'm saying that right. This is what I've been calling A Bug's Life with guns. Like, imagine if A Bug's Life, it wasn't like Flick was an inventor and they're all grinding to pay tribute to the grasshoppers or anything like that, but instead they got caught up in the military industrial complex, and the bugs became like fucking Buzz Lightyear Star Command adventure guys. So you're like a bug, you're like an alien bug, but essentially what this is like a third-person shooter. Like it feels like a throwback. It feels like a game from the 2000s where it's like very straightforward. There's just a cool, interesting hook, and you blast your way through levels and encounter cool stuff. Here, you are a guy who very much, like I said, feels like Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, like space hero adventure. He's British. He's very to the point. He kind of reminds me of like Ralph Fiennes, like very proper, but very commando. And you're running around these lush, dense environments, fighting robots and like other bug creatures, and what kind of looks like, you know, like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, like you're shrunken down into a backyard. But you have all this high-tech stuff. You have scanners. You have a jetpack. You have all different weapon types. You have this cool vehicle. So it's very much like haha, quirky, cute bug stuff, but it takes it seriously, not super seriously, but like the right amount of serious to just kind of make it cool in a weird way. So what I played was very, very work in progress. I'll be honest. It seems like this game is still quite a ways off. It's a little simple. The controls weren't really quite there yet, but I saw something, and what I saw was just kind of like, if I was 12 and I played this, I thought this would be the coolest shit ever. Cool bug video game guy with like a laser gun, jetpacking around, blasting stuff. I don't know. Like I said, I think this one still has a ways to go in terms of like really figuring out that loop, and like there is a loot system, and you know, these environments are kind of like open zones. So I'm curious to see how much they can really do with this concept, because I think on paper, just like space alien bug man in a backyard, like I think that's a cool idea. Another thing briefly I did get to check out is Obsalm. This is a really interesting one, right? Because this is from Dotemu, the publisher, developer that has had their hands in a lot of things. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. In my last video, I talked about Marvel Cosmic Invasion and how much I enjoyed playing that. They've done stuff with like the classic Metal Slug games. They have a hand in this retro thing, right? But Obsalm for them is just a completely new IP. This isn't them like working on some other property. It's them coming up with their own adventure and lore and characters. And essentially what this is a fantasy style roguelite beat 'em up. And I know we have like a kind of beat 'em up with online and roguelite elements in Towerborn more recently, but this felt a little bit more roguelite-y. Like it felt like it really gets the progression and just how these games go down, like how a Hades or a one of my favorite Dead Cells really feels, but with fun beat 'em up brawler style gameplay. I got to mess around with a couple of different characters. I like where it's going. I also really like this like hand-drawn style, this like hand-drawn animation style. It like really kind of, I can't really put my finger on like what it feels inspired by, but I just like it. It's bright, it's colorful, it's bold. It seems like they're doing a story and lore and characters. Whether or not that's all gonna land, I don't know, but at the very least, it seems like with the gameplay, they are absolutely cooking. And there is actually a demo on Steam if you're interested. Another one I'm gonna talk about that may not have been on your radar, I think it was announced at Summer Game Fest. This is called Out of Words. I got to play this. This is going to be like a multi-platform game. It's also published by Epic, but this is a cooperative side-scrolling adventure. Kind of think of it like a cooperative side-scrolling split fiction or It Takes Two. Here, it's like very much like, you know, two players who have to really work together to play through this gripping emotional story. But what I noticed right away is that it is very challenging. It seems pretty engaging in terms of like these characters progressing through these 2D environments, gaining different abilities, and then you kind of stumble around and screw around, figure out how to use them and how to succeed with some trial and error. But what's really interesting about this one is just how beautifully it's constructed. So I should have started with this right off the bat, man, but this is like all constructed with stop motion animation techniques, from objects in the environments themselves, and the characters. They all have this stop motion animation look, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's beautiful. A couple of times I said holy shit out loud. Specifically, I got to see like the beginning of the game where the characters start out, they're thrown into this world. They're two young characters that have a relationship, but they are plopped into this weird fantasy setting, and they realize that they can't speak. Their mouths are sealed shut, and they have to get through this and figure this out. And along this adventure, they're going to meet weird, quirky characters. Some characters that I thought they were so cool and creatively designed and quirky and cartoonish that I actually thought they were like from something already. They just had that like appeal right away. Really quirky characters, but what blew me away, and one of the moments when I said holy shit, was when the characters got thrust into kind of like a town area, a little settlement area of all these magical quirky characters. And essentially you're just walking through this village, this underground village inhabited by clay people that kind of remind me of like the Gorons from Legend of Zelda, but it's these clay people in this town with all these other weird little quirky creatures and stuff. And you're walking through and you see all these things milling about, and it's like a little town or city made out of books and bookshelves. And it was absolutely beautiful and detailed and really cool. So creative, quirky, fun, but also it seems like it has a really good emotional through line. People working on this game are very, very locked into telling an emotional and interesting story while also showcasing the beauty of stop motion animation and creation and the amount of effort and pride that comes from that. I don't know. I was just like eating this one up. I was all about it. I think just mark my words now. I think when this does eventually release, I think a lot of people are going to be singing its praises because it seems like it's going to be one that tugs at the heartstrings. And as someone who just loves like co-op things to play through, I'm looking forward to the new Little Nightmares having some co-op stuff. I love Split Fiction, It Takes Two, A Way Out. This is inspired by that, but also just inspired by, I believe, being based on like a Danish poem. And again, really giving love to the whole stop motion creation of art. Again, if you miss it, this is called Out of Words, and I think this is definitely one to keep an eye on. Last but certainly not least, like I said, I did check out Resident Evil 9 at Capcom, but I also got to see Animusha Way of the Sword. So unfortunately with this one, I wasn't able to get my hands on the controller and play it for myself, but I did get to see a work in progress version of the game being demoed right in front of me. It was real. I could tell because it crashed twice. That happens in these behind the scenes events. But what I got to see is awesome. Keep in mind, I have a lot of nostalgia for the original Animusha. I loved it back in the day. It really scratched an interesting itch as a young Resident Evil fan and a Capcom fan looking for that next thing. It really hit. And with Animusha Way of the Sword, I was blown away how much I like this, because I went in thinking like, yeah, cool, Animusha's back. All right, like, cool, it's Animusha. It's going to be modern Animusha. They're probably going to make it like a fucking Souls-like, whatever. But then what I saw just really blew me away. Just a really good, straightforward, third-person action combat adventure that felt like it still had the DNA of Animusha. There's something about the original Animushas that had a really good, very direct striking system. Those attacks felt fast, swift, and tactile. From the like the sound of the attacks, the crunch on enemies, the clang of swords when you would hold block. All of that stuff to me was very important in the original Animusha, and seeing the game here, I noticed that is there right away. So you guys probably, if you care, you probably saw the reveal, like the gameplay reveal and those trailers and stuff like that. And you probably thought with some of those animations and stuff like, wow, that's cool. I can confirm, like, I was blown away by the style of these fights and how they felt. You walk around as this character, he's got a cloak on, and then when you go to encounter an enemy and lock on an enemy, he flips the cloak off, like revealing his one arm with a sword, And from there, it kind of plays like how you might expect, and like if you've seen the gameplay already. But what I noticed is just the attention to detail. It just felt so reactive, so responsive, with some incredible animations and sound design. The clang of swords, the clash of swords, the fact that the character can hold block, and if an enemy strikes him from behind, he won't turn to auto block. He'll have his hand behind him with the sword to do a block. The sparks, the flash, really, really satisfying. And I like, there were parts where he's parrying people and just one-handed, like shing, like just really, really good style and feel to it. And I say there's like swagger to this main character that I think is really, really cool. Obviously, his face model is done. It's like a famous old Japanese actor. I'm not too familiar with that stuff. I'll be totally honest, even though I love movies, I'm sorry. But what comes with that is just such an expressive face. Like, I'm talking every cutscene I got to see, this homeboy was walking into places looking like he was giving the people's the eyebrow, like he was doing the Rock thing, like expressive, smiley, weird, nervous, like all that was really hitting. But he didn't feel overly goofy, right? Like the game had a swagger and confidence to it, but it also still felt creepy and dark. Like you roll up on like, you know, the creatures like killing civilians, you see haunted villages, you go into kind of like a spirit realm at one point. There's a lot of fucked up shit still, but you're just playing as a guy who's cool. One thing that took me out of it is what I got to see had English voice acting, and the English voice actor for this character wasn't really doing it for me. It was super British, like almost like to a corny degree. And I think if this game, I'll probably choose like the Japanese voice acting or something like that. But still, I got to see a really good boss fight, a one-on-one boss fight with kind of like a kind of creepy, like samurai hat guy, like something out of like a Ghost of Tsushima, but like haunted and ghoulish. And he also kind of like looked like Ezra Miller, the actor, but really interesting, weird, spooky vibes with this character. And it was just a good ass boss battle. Along with the boss battle and some tougher enemies, right? You are still killing them to get the orbs that you then absorb with the gauntlet, like classic Animusha, but you're also doing certain attacks and like parry stuff. Like you're actually selecting different targeted areas of these enemies mid-attack to then hit that attack point and extract different orbs. So releasing different orbs into the environment, right? So like if you're low on health, you do that special attack that will get that orb to come out of them and then try and time it right and get enough room to then quickly absorb them. So cool, interesting use of like the orb stuff, the gauntlet from like classic Animusha gameplay, but like all the while you're doing that, you're also ranged enemies, like you're just deflecting fireballs, you're deflecting arrows back at guys, and it all just feels really cool. It also seems pretty simple. It doesn't seem like a big open world thing. It feels like a traditional ass video game, but like with quality and detail to it, from the confidence of the character and how that, you know, flows over to animations and everything. I don't know. Look, it sounds like I'm shilling, but I just was surprised because I like Animusha. I was excited that they announced a new one. But again, like I said at the start, I went in going, okay, cool, new Animusha. Like, let's see what it's going to be like. Let's see how it's going to be. I can probably imagine how it is. And it was just like that, but cooler. Again, this is a preview. I only got to see a small snippet of the game. It's a work in progress. They could totally fuck it up. But from what I saw, I came away excited to play it, excited to see more. But that's everything I wanted to talk about today. Like I said, I got my hands on a bunch of new games and stuff like that. So that's what I think about all this. Hopefully you appreciate a roundup. I also, like I said, check out the other video I did where I detailed a bunch of other stuff. But let me know what you think about these games. I'd love to know what you guys think, you know, because I'm probably going to be covering a lot of them in the future, but I'd love to just hear your first reactions of preview stuff. If you heard of all these, if you didn't hear of all these, like, let me know in the comments. Hit me up. If you like this video and you like what I'm trying to do here, I'm just talking about stuff I love mostly, stuff I find interesting. Clicking the like button helps me. Thank you. But I think that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. That's it. I'm Jake Baldino. Subscribe because video games. Pizza's on me.